Hey everybody, I'm Mr. Steve, and in the last two videos, we were working on making an add-on with Serpin's visual scripting. Now this is going to be part 3, where we actually export the add-on. We're going to add some different menu features, and then I'm going to do an overview of what we did so you understand it. And then the next series, which will be a little bit more advanced, we'll create a better add-on, something that's actually utility and can be used. So if you're interested in that, go check out video 1 and 2 and then pick this one up. All right, guys, let's get started. All right, guys, so let's take a look at LM Studio, the Light Magic Studio. I've got it on Blender Market. I've got it on Gumroad. I've sold over 100 copies of it, and I want to just go ahead and show everybody what we've got here. So just like in the beginning, you'll have a panel. And this is the panel for the light manager. And I've got a light manager here. So as you can see, I've got multiple panels. So that way people can kind of recess and collapse the panel. And if you're going to make an add-on, you don't want the resources to be taking up a lot of the actual resources for their computer. So you have to hit a recycle button here to even load the models that are in here and the different lighting schemes. So you don't even have the option to have it loaded until you click it, which saves a lot of time, a lot of memory for the user, okay? And just to give you an idea of how I achieved my little menu grab thing here, what we can do real quick is I can throw a camera in the scene, and I've got a mesh object. I'm going to dupe that. I'll move this one over, and then I've got a camera. And over here in the outliner, which you can see, I don't have any of these in folders, but this operator, this setup right here, and this is a row node, which will put all of these in line left to right, respectively. And all I did was add a button, a single operator, and then a run operator. And this one's going to grab all the lights and move it to a collection. And I said this one is new. And so there's a lot more you can do with this. I still have to expand it, but this is the basic setup for right now. And what you can do is you can click on lights, and there are no lights in the scene. So let's add a light real quick. So if you click on it, drop down. If you click on the lights and add a folder, or just click the folder button, it now put lights in its own folder. And if I click mesh and folder, there's no empties, but camera and folder. I now have, and I'm pretty sure you can see all that, everything just went into its own folder. All the mesh objects, the two spheres, and then the camera collection. And so everything moved into its own folder. And so just kind of get the idea of what we're trying to do here is make something that is actually functional and that is needed for organization. So when you're creating an add-on, have a purpose for it. Okay, so let's turn this over back to the main graph that we were working on last time. We'll kind of finish that up and then we'll move forward. And real quick, guys, I just want to say thank you for all the subscribers. And if you're new here, go ahead and smash that subscribe. And if you found good content here, smash that like on the way out. Also, it really supports the channel if you do decide to show your thanks in a monetary way, because I do plan on doing Blender as a full-time job, and or rather 3D and everything else as a full-time thing. So really appreciate you guys, and let's get back to the video. All right, so this is the graph we were working on last time. And just to recap, we created a debug area so we could test out different nodes and find out what their name is. What data are they putting out? We created a panel. We created checks to make sure before we do an operation, before we try to do something or set a property, does it exist? Because if it does exist, then we can run that property. If it doesn't exist and in the background the add-on's trying to look for something, it's going to pop errors. And then we did a check. We did the check, and then we checked for the name of the modifier and the name of the object. And then we set those with a string value to represent not only the object, the OBJ, but the modifier, so that way you can see what you have. And then we displayed all that on a label. Then after that, we set up a Blender operator button and then a custom operator. Okay, and the custom operator puts out a subdivision surface with a specific name, and it is a subsurf. We put the level of subdivision to 2. We set it to simple, but you can put it to Kaltman-Clark if you wish. And in order to actually put a button up here for that, let's do that in the display properties so that even though it's going to set it one certain way, and you can just go back in actually, and instead of simple here, you can get the Kaltman-Clark for this and debug that. And we can actually debug that, and we have a debug section here as well, which you just keep these, you know. And you could very easily get this, and now you have to type it in exactly, cat mul and Clark. So if I wanted to type that in, and I'll just put on caps, cat mul underscore and Clark, and hit enter. You don't put any of the commas or any of that stuff in there. Don't do that. And if we pull this out, we'll have to double check it, and it looks good. So I'm going to use the modifier that we made, excuse me, the add-on we made, and I'm going to delete that. Now, if I throw a Kaltman-Clark on, it actually looks good, right? So we had it set to simple, but now we have it set to Kaltman-Clark, which makes a lot more sense. So I wanted to go ahead and change that, and I will create a save point. So what we want to do now is we want to bring that button over. So in order to do that, I'm actually going to jump into data, and I always copy the context. Sometimes you can copy the context from over here. You'll have a copy context in a lot of different spaces, but generally just under the blend data browser, we can go to data, and we should be able to go down to objects, OBJs, and find our plane, which is the only object. Drop that down, and then we're going to grab the modifiers, okay? And we'll see super subd. Now, under super subd, we should find a type, but we're not looking for the single type. We're looking for the subdivision type. And I believe this subdivision type is what we're looking for. So let's copy that. And then I've got to move that hokey pokey thing out of the way. And I want to actually display this in the add-on. And so I'm going to come back over to my panel, and I'm going to hit Shift V. And this is the subdivision type. So once you pull the property out of the Blend Data Browser, please save it. Don't do that to yourself, because you'll hit the Control Z button until you're trained. Because you'll make mistakes. When you hit Control Z once, the program like eyeballs you, and then all of a sudden it's going to crash. So yeah. So let's get a display property for this one, and we're going to display it. Now let's see, where is this going to pop up? Obviously right at the bottom, and I don't want that. So I'm going to detach that, hit the little minus symbol, and just like yesterday, and if you don't have insert socket buttons on, you'll need to turn that on. I'm going to hit the up arrow a couple times, and I may want this to pop up at the top, or I may want it to pop up in the middle, and I may want to cut these and put them in a bunch of different places, but I'm going to just put it between these two. And so now I'm going to tag this in right here underneath this. And it would make more sense probably to put that right underneath the subdivision levels, but let's go ahead and tag this in and just see what happens. So now we have the Kaltman-Clark, or the simple, as a drop down. Now it is just referencing plane, and we don't want that for the object. So we're going to switch this to property, and now it's going to be using whatever active object is in the scene, and you won't kick an error. Now this could also, because this is a specific modifier that we created, we could come over here and just right click over Katmil and click Get Serpent's Property. And then we can hit Shift V and tag this in, and it is the same thing. and that is another way of doing it. Like I said, that does not always work. Sometimes you have to get stuff in context, and you're not going to be able to just pull this. You're not going to be able to pull this from here, because if you had two subdivision surface modifiers and you have them both on the same mesh and they don't have a name that is different, you're literally going to change the value here, and it's going to up here. Like if you put the sub D value here and then you try to change it, it's going to change on both subdivision surface modifiers. So what you have to do is go into the Blend Data browser, find that specific modifier, and then pull that out. Or you'll have to do like what we did with the loop. And when you have the loop for, you can then identify the individual things that are inside the collection. And that way you're only changing the properties on the specific thing you're working on. And then there's more to it. We set the active object. But the takeaway here is that you see this is subdivision type under modifiers, subdivision type under modifiers. And then of course you would change this to property so it can pull that. All right, so let's progressively step up that difficulty I was telling you guys about in the last video. And we're going to change this because this drop down is inefficient, and that's not what you have over here. So you can click expand. Okay, now you don't have any names, but you can see it is switching, which is really cool, right? All you gotta do is come here to the label, hit spacebar, and hit enter. Okay, and now these are actually going to change, right? And you think you're done, but that really is not the right way to do it. It is one way of doing it, but if you want this to be perfect, then we're going to need to do something. So hit N in the N panel, go to properties, and this is in the Serpents tab, by the way. Go slow. This is in our properties, and we're going to add a custom Serpents property, not a internal Blender property, but we're going to use the internal Blender property to drive the Serpents property. So click the new plus symbol. Let's call this sub D. Then we're going to have an option down here for the type. You got a bunch of things you can choose from. This is going to end up being an enum because that is a list. Integers are single values, floats have decimals, booleans are true, false, on, off, and a number of other things. Then you have the pointer properties, which we've used plenty. Then you have collections, and then you have groups. And the collections will call on custom groups if you want to make those later. But right now, we're just going to use this as an enum item. Now you have an option down here. You can select multiple, you can do dynamic enums, and if you do a dynamic enums, you have to generate a list. And we're not doing that in this one because that is far, far more advanced. We are going to just add 2 items to our list. One we will call cat for Catmull Clark, and the next one we're just going to call it simple. Okay, and that way we can identify them. Now under the add node right here, we can add the custom Serpents property, and you'll see that we are either going to be using this on the add-on or using it on a node, and we don't have any node selected, so we're not going to be doing it that way. And we don't have from property group because we didn't create a group with group properties. We're just going to be setting this property via an on property update, and this is one of those things you're going to need to learn. So that's why I'm jumping into it right away, because it is so important that you understand. Let me move this around a bit. It's important you understand that the proper way to do things in here will not throw errors. It won't slow down your add-on and Blender, and ultimately crash it, which is no good. So the Serpents property can plug directly in, okay? And we'll have our stuff will still be showing up, but now our button doesn't work. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to set this, and let's make sure we grab a set property. You can grab these from anywhere, pretty much. You can Shift A S and type in set prop. Yeah, that's the same thing. Okay, but over here it's kind of convenient, and you can also grab a display property, a regular display property from here. So it's very convenient. You can set it all up. Now what we're going to need is to set these 2 properties according to the subdivision type. And right now, I think I can just minimize this so it's out of the way. And we wouldn't just connect this because we need something between these two to kind of interpret the property that we just made. So it's right. So Shift-A-S, let's type in Enum. And what we want to do is get an Enum map for execute, not for interface. Interface is the orange sockets. We want the white sockets. You can instantly tag that in. The on-property update is going to plug in as well. So we want the value. So what we're pumping through is whatever is attached via the set property, the on-property update. They're all kind of like connected in the background. And this is going to pump out the properties that we set down here. So, and then every time you change the value that's being set here, it's going to read the Enum map according to the selection. And so let's add 2 spots. And in the top spot, we'll type in cat and type this in, you know, the way you did here. So if you want to copy it, you can do that and just hit enter. All right, so option 1 is going to be set right here. And I can go ahead and tag that in. I'm going to change this to string because I want to type in what needs to be set. And this is cat, so I'm going to type in, and I'm going to hit caps, Catmull _ Clark. Okay, and now that property is going to be set. So let's set the second one. And what we'll do is we'll Shift D, copy that. We can tag that in. And what I'm tagging in is the output property. Excuse me, I got a really stiff neck. Oof. So I'm tagging in that property, just so you can see. And I'll change this one to string also. And this one's going to be simple. And they have to be, under here, they have to be typed in the way we did when we debugged it. So if you have to create another debug, go ahead and do that to make sure that you're pumping out the correct data. And just to kind of reiterate, I want this to be easy for everybody. Subdivision type, run trigger, Catmull Clark is what this is pumping out right now because it's what it's set to. If I set it to simple, run the trigger, you get simple. So these are what you would type in. And I'm going to turn off caps and create a save point. Come back over here. We look like we're set up pretty good. Let's go ahead and see if this works now. And yes, now it works. And this is cat for Catmull, and the, let's see. If I just type it in Catmull Clark, it should still work because, and it is not working now because it is not Catmull Clark here. And these have to match, that way it identifies it. And now it'll work and it'll set these properties for you. So if you change the name over here, you've got to change it in the Enum map as well. And now you just created your first Enum map. And let's Shift select all of this and bring it down. Control J. I definitely want to name this as my on-prop update enums for sub D. And I just want this to be super simple for myself and for you. So change the color, whatever you want. Bring up that label size. If you want to move a node so it sits more properly inside of the box, then go ahead and do that. And now this makes a lot more sense to have an add-on that has some of these features that you can change even though there's a preset. And you can see the mesh definitely is changing, so everything is working just fine. All right, let's cover something that is a little bit more fun, and this is actually going to be a pie menu, and the pie menu is one of those things you can use to quickly offer the user some shortcut keys. You can have some power moves in there, like, you know, if you want to add specific sub-Ds and things like that, and you can add all the custom operators to these buttons, you can do whatever you want. So I'm going to hit N, and get rid of or bring up the graph, and I kind of got to click around in here, Serpens, boom. All right, so click the plus symbol here. Let's rename this one to MyPy. And MyPy is going to be a totally different graph. You're not going to see any of this. It's like, it'd be like layering geometry node graphs in a manner of speaking. But all the code's going to print out the same. You don't have to do any of that. Then after the Py menu, we're actually going to export the add-on, and then you can put it on the market and offer it to people for free, or you can put it in the add-on automatically does this. It'll put it in an init file and in a zip folder, and it's going to appropriately have everything labeled. We'll have it named. You'll get credit for it, and if you want, you could create a Blender Market account and sell it if it's good enough. Because absolutely, there's other people out there that have different ideas than you, and they have different problems they're facing. And the funny thing is that the problems that you're facing, there's many other people that are doing that as well. And so then if you make an add-on that kind of meets those needs, it could be valuable. And at the very least, you're helping the Blender community and learning something new. So what we can do here, the first thing is Shift-A-S. And what we want to do is on key press. All right, zoom that bad boy in. I'll press N to get rid of the panel. The on key press is kind of how you get your shortcuts to show up. So if I hit Y over here, nothing's actually happening right now. But if you were to hit like period, you know that there's some internal Blender Py menus, and so this is a Py menu, and it just kind of allows you to pivot around and grab certain things, okay? And you'll be able to have some very powerful quick moves, some hotkeys for whoever, whatever. So if you click on Y and then click U, you can change it to U. You can now make the on key press, or rather the Py menu, pop up with Alt U. If I can press Alt U, and I've actually got Alt U already. So if you actually downloaded my Bevel Magic, this is going to pop up. So Alt U. Funny. So I'm going to go back to Y and see if I don't have that one tagged in too. Okay, so I'm not using Alt Y, or you can do combinations. You can do Shift Alt Y, which doesn't make a lot of sense normally, because if you have to use both hands for short keys, that's not good. So you can stick with something easy. Maybe Shift Y makes more sense. Or you can do Control Shift Q. Let's try Control Shift Q. You just gotta kind of figure out what doesn't have something on there. And the next thing we want to do is Shift-A-S. We're going to type in Pi for Py menu. Super easy. Let's grab a button, Shift-A-S. Let's type in button. You can go ahead and connect the first interface socket to the interface socket of the button. Rename it, do whatever you want to it. Let's put hello in there for now. I chose the wrong thing. Let me put E back in there. So Alt E, and nothing comes up because I don't have my Py menu attached. So let's go over here to operator. We'll select Py menu, and then it's going to allow you to select a Py menu, or you can go to custom. Pull this out just a touch. That's under MyPy, which is the node graph we're using, and we can select Py menu, which is this one. And you can rename this to whatever you want, and you'll see it'll change here just so you kind of get like an understanding of what's going on. So if I come over here and hit Alt E, I now have hello, and that's our button, and it says no operator associated with it because we don't have anything there. So this is where you could go in and you could find like what you want to go in there. So let's just say you really wanted Shift-A-S, maybe the UV sphere, you use that a lot. So let's right click and get Serpent's property, and then we can paste it in. You'll be able to set up the amount of segments, enter edit mode, align it to the world, a certain location, rotation, and a certain scale. So if I wanted this to kind of pop in a little bit smaller than normal, and I'll rename this sphere 0.5 or something like that. Just rename these 0.5, and I come over here, hit Alt-E, sphere 0.5, and it's going to pop in a 0.5 sphere. Okay, and so now you've got a pie menu started, and it's really simple. I'll just collapse this, or you hit H to hide this. And now if I just make copies, and I think we can put in like 7 of these, and we're going to tag each one of these next menu items into the yellow socket. And if you don't understand what's going on there, you kind of don't have to collapse them all. If it's easier for you, I'm just going to leave mine collapsed, and I want to go ahead and tag all of these in. Bring the pie menu down so it's a little bit easier to see what you're doing. And I'm just going to tag all these in. They all have the same function currently, but that's okay. And so now you can see what you've got is a nice list, and you can have one more for standard uses. You can do a lot more with this. You can throw in specialized menus. You can throw in enums like we just made and have something pop up, and you can have drop-down lists in a number of different things. And now that is a very, very basic setup for a pie menu, and you can grab all these and hit S and scale them on Y. That makes more sense. G and X, move them over. So when I hit H to unhide these, I can kind of scale them and have it look normal. Looks pretty good. All right, so there's your basic pie menu, very, very basic. What we're going to do next, though, is we're going to create a menu, and then we're going to start stealing menus inside of Blender. So you can actually go back to the main graph for this one. And if you have Node Wrangler enabled, you can start hitting Shift and right mouse / on this and kind of fixing stuff up so it looks nice for the most part and organized. There we go. Kind of bring that up just a touch. That way everything kind of looks good and makes sense. Now what we can do is want to add to a menu and then take something from a menu. So let's just say you have a Blender, and this is context, by the way. So if you take something from another menu and try to plug it in, like you take something from over here and steal it and try to display it in the end panel, that's not always going to work because it's very context sensitive on a lot of these things. So we can go to annotations, possibly item properties, align tools. It doesn't matter. We can just grab something. So let's go ahead and Shift A S and type in add to menu. Okay. And I also want to get add to panel. And we're going to just look at all of these. Then we can grab menu. And let's get sub menu. Oop, come back here. Shift A S, sub menu, which these will go together. And now we'll grab a copy panel because this one's going to be one of the ones we use. And we can get a copy menu. All right, so I'm not going to go through all of this because it's just going to be too much, I think, for a new user. What we will do is we're going to copy a menu first and foremost. And so we'll go back over to the add-on for sub D, and let's plug in. And before we do that, let's create a save point because this is a little bit more buggies, but buggies? I said buggies. This is a little bit more buggy, but let's go ahead and tag this in. And this already has add view 3D, so it's going to be preset. So if you click view add 3D, okay, you're going to see all these little red spots. Now these are all places where you can readily come in and copy a menu and put it into your add-on. So if we go to object, You don't see anything red here, okay? But if you go to object and go all the way down, you'll see object menu. And now you'll have your object menu in here. And if it makes more sense, you can actually cut that. Let's come down here, Shift-A-S. Let's type in panel. And you can plug it in here. Now, we just created a new category, so our panel's over here, and you can kind of do it that way, but if you want it to show up under sub D, you just go to category and type in sub D and hit enter. And it has to be case sensitive, and everything else has to be perfect. And this one can be objects or object menu, okay? And this is going to pop in right here so you can collapse it. Now it's a really big menu, so like you wouldn't have that expanded. So what you would do is you would say default closed, okay? So if this is open and I hit Shift R to compile it, it's going to, after compile, it's kind of simulating being opened by the user. And so that's now going to say, hey, I am closed when I open. Or rather, when you open Blender, you open the add-on, it's going to show up closed. All right. Now you get the general idea. You can kind of poke around and figure that out. Now copy panel is a whole different ball game as well. So let's go ahead and throw that in. And now we have a copy panel. So let's click this. And what you can do now is you can go in to like edit menu. Let's go to the bool tool, and I can grab all the Boolean stuff right here. Select bool tool. Boom. Now, if I go back to our add-on, sub D, we're going to have absolutely nothing showing up. So let's figure out, let's Shift R, compile, and let's figure out why we're not actually displaying this. Never mind. It is displaying it, it's just displaying it way down here. So if I remove that, the object menu will automatically close, but now you'll see this. And so you may want that to have its own panel, but I don't suggest doing it this way because these are already readily accessible in the end panel, but you can grab them. And if it's functions that are normally going to be like very, very useful, I can actually come over here to my pie. And I can grab difference and get the serpent's property. I can paste that in. Now I can call this bool diff for difference. And you have to have two objects selected. So if I drop in a cube, let's move that bad boy over just a touch. And I'll select this, Control E, and there's bool difference. And you can see it cut a very nice Boolean for us. And so you can kind of select these. You can grab union, get serpent's property, come in, paste it, and call this bool union. And you can grab all these because it's not quite as convenient. Like if I have to switch off of my, end panel to go do something, that's not very convenient. So the Alt-E menu. Now you'll have a bool union as well, and then you've got your little sphere, and that's funny, it put it right back together for us. Yeah, so that just makes more sense. And then I can grab both of these, Alt-E, and make a union out of it, and that works very nicely, so that's one mesh. All right, so that's good, and I'm going to cover the add menus and these submenus in the next one because it's really a tutorial completely on its own, and we don't want to get this thing too complex right off. And then the add to menus and panels, you see the basic uses for those. And so I can actually come down here and delete this because I don't really need that. I don't need any of that. We've got some beta testing down there. I'm going to save. I'm going to Shift R, recompile. Everything looks good. All the buttons are showing up, so just remember that. So if I add the subplane and the sub D, our little add-on here comes up, and then we can switch things, and everything still works. So let's export this real quick so you've got an add-on. So go ahead, close properties, close everything else. Let's go to add-on. You can name your add-on, and I'm just going to call this the super sub D. And then I'm going to put my name in there, Mr. Steve, and hit enter. And then if you have any documents, URLs, something you want to put in, like your Blender Market site, or not even that, more of like a website that's dedicated to your add-on, then you can go to the document URL and type in something there. Categories 3D. If you were doing something that was context specific, this add-on is going to, you can change it there, but you don't need to do that. This will be version 1. And now what you can do is click Save Add-on. I've got a little testing folder here, and it's going to say super sub D 1.0.zip. So it's literally going to make everything for you. And before I do that, go back to scripting. Let's take a look at this. And it wrote 274 lines of code. It wrote the register for us, so you don't have to go in and do any of that. And the BL info, everything else, the import BPY, the BPY utilities, previews, strings, everything is written for us. All of our definitions, everything is in here. So we're looking good. We've got our classes. You can see our pie menu right here. So you can kind of get like an idea of what's going on in the code. Like I said, you don't have to know any of it. So let's do save add-on. And now we just click export. Don't move the mouse. I found out that can cause a glitch. And now you'll have this little box pop up. If you think your add-on's interesting to others, you can share it. What you can do is directly upload it. I never directly upload my add-ons because I'm not giving them away free on that market. I'm giving a bunch of add-ons free on the Gumroad that I have. And then some of my other ones that I would choose to sell support the channel, and those are on Blender Market. And I do have some for sale on Gumroad, but most of my stuff on Gumroad is free. So I could upload that, but I don't have to do anything. So now what I can do is I can come in here and I can select my D drive, and I want to find the testing folder. If I can, let's see, I'm just going to scroll down and look for it. Tutorials, blah, 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 testing 1. And there's my super sub D add-on. Okay, so I can actually go now and I'm going to do a little save point here, and we'll go ahead and do a new copy because you cannot have Serpens open and have your add-on installed. So in other words, you either need to figure out a workflow that works for you, or you're making add-ons in like 3.6, like 3.5 maybe, you can do that. And then you look at them in 3.6. So whatever you want to do, but I'll create a new one and go to edit, preferences. I want to install an add-on. I got to look for it, and I'm going to find testing 1, and there's my add-on. So if I double click that, that's now going to pop up Mr. Steve. There's the init.py version 1. I go ahead and enable that, and I should be able to scroll right down here at the bottom, and now we've got my add-on 1.0. I can just go ahead and add the plane, and you see our plane is now in. It came in Catmull Clark. I can add the sub D. The sub D did not override that for some reason, which is actually kind of good. Maybe it's just the way it was. But there's the 2 levels, and there's the 5 levels of render. And if I hit Alt-E, I've got a bool menu here and here, and then I got all these little tiny spheres I can put in the scene. So that's it, guys. You just made an add-on. Congratulations. It's not much more difficult than that. You just have to learn how to find the appropriate data in context. And when you do that and you understand what the nodes are, it's just like learning geometry nodes. Once you learn that there's a joint geometry and you can actually bring your original geometry in, plus the distribute points on face, plus you can tie in more dual instances and dual mesh and all that good stuff. Once you figure out you can do all that, it becomes much easier, and you can make more complex add-ons. And I myself am learning this stuff every day because it is complex. But once you get to another point, though, you'll find out how easy it actually is. So thank you for watching. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and I will add more to this series, much more advanced things. There are also other tutorial creators out there that make excellent tutorials. One is Blanches B, the other one is Corza. So go look those guys up on YouTube. They are amazing, and they are super high advanced. They're the top echelon guys. But I'm creating this beginner to intermediate and then working into an advanced course for you guys so that we can all benefit and grow. So thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Happy blending.